Naruto Uzumaki is pretty much universally acknowledged as the physically strongest Kage out of the current 5 Kage generation. Even without the power of the Kyuubi, Naruto still pretty much heads and shoulders above the other Kages. During the versus Momoshiki arc, while all the other Kages were pretty much getting one shot, with Gar being able to briefly restrain fused Momoshiki and Kurostsuchi being able to dodge and briefly attack fused Momoshiki, which in of itself should be applauded given how freakishly powerful fused Momoshiki is. However, that power is nothing compared to what Naruto was able to do. Even after getting 50% of his chakra absorbed by Momoshiki, Naruto in his base was able to avoid, counter, and take hard-hitting blows from fused Momoshiki, including a pretty nasty variation of the 1-inch punch, which sent Naruto flying all the way across the battlefield. So it'd be pretty crazy for anyone to say, I wonder how well Kurostsuchi would do in a fight with Naruto, and personally, I'd agree with you. We'd have to queue up the Law & Order Special Victims Unit logo for the Boruto opening whenever that episode took place. However, here's the thing though. Being a Kage isn't about who has the most raw physical strength. There's a whole other side to being a Kage, and not all battles are fought using village busting attacks, and some are fought in other ways. It's exactly why in today's video I want to go over in detail the moment when Kurostsuchi versus Naruto took place and explain the significance of it. Now, for those of you guys who are new, the information is given to us from the Naruto light novel Shikamaru Shinden Mourning Clouds, which I'll leave links down in the description box to anyone who wants to read the novel and do so in a way that helps support the channel. As a reminder, the timeline placement for this novel stretches pretty far from the early parts directly after the versus Momoshiki arc, and the latter parts taking place sometime after the Mujina Bandits arc and just before the Vessel arc of the Boruto manga. Now, for the reason between this fight between Kurostsuchi and Naruto is a pretty good one in my opinion. Essentially, the scene takes place just after Shikamaru arrives at the 5 Kage summit as the lone representative of Konoha besides Naruto. During the time when Naruto gives a speech to the 5 Kage, briefing them on Sasuke's findings in Kaguya's dimension, where Sasuke battled against Kinshiki and narrowly escaped, informing them about the Uzumaki clan scroll that Sasuke found, which Konoha had been decoding in secret during the Chunin exams, and closing out with a very heartfelt apology for not telling the Kages that there were Uzumaki on the way to Earth and for the Chunin exams being attacked. Naruto even goes as far as to bow his head while speaking to the other Kages, which is very quite telling in my opinion. The most powerful ninja on the planet was bowing his head, begging the other Kages for forgiveness. He even thanks them for their part in being part of the rescue team that saved him, admitting that had they not arrived, he very well could have died. It takes a very strong man to bow his head before people who are weaker than him. It speaks volumes about Naruto's humility and how much he values the respect of the other Kages. However, while Gar is the first to accept Naruto's apology, which is quickly followed up by a very cautious Darui, Shikamaru takes note in the obvious anger that's building in the room. Throughout Naruto's entire speech, Kurostsuchi was visibly angry, growing more and more irritated with every word that Naruto spoke, enough so that Shikamaru even jokes in his head that she's truly the granddaughter of the mighty fence sitter, the cranky Kage Onoiki. However, it's in the moments where Naruto begs for forgiveness that Kurostsuchi attacks Naruto during this 5 Kage summit. Now, with the scene finally being set, it's here I'm gonna begin quoting. So that's basically it. Sorry for all the hassle. Real piece of work this time. We're gonna do everything we can to make sure that nothing like this ever happens again. Believe it, Naruto said. Naruto scratched the back of his head and bowed again to the 4 Kages. Naruto's good friend, Kazekage Gar, eyes rimmed with dark circles, nodded his head in acceptance of the apology. Could have been worse, but we're all fine. No need to bow your head like that, Raikage Darui said, pushing against his seat. Mizukage Chodoro shrugged. At any rate, if you detect any strange happenings, please report them to us right away this time. You got it, Naruto said. I'll let you know straight away if anything else comes up. I'm really sorry about all the trouble, Naruto said. If sorry was enough, we wouldn't need ninja. Kurostsuchi's cold voice sliced through the air as though to wipe Naruto's grin off his face. I said I was sorry. Naruto bowed his head again under Kurostsuchi's glare. These things always happen with the village of Konoha at the center. We only ever learn about the situation once things have gotten so bad we have no choice but to get involved in it. Kurostsuchi said, this thing, it doesn't happen that often. Naruto began, how long do you intend to placate us like this? When will you stop toying with this Konoha? Kurostsuchi slammed her hand down on the white table. Hey, aren't you acting a little too hot under the collar today, Kurostsuchi? Darui said. Darui glanced out at her from the corner of his eyes and clasped his hands behind his head. Alongside Chojo and Shikamaru, they had came up together as comrades, a group comprised of ninja working towards the next generation of the 5 great nations. Shikamaru's wife Tamari had also been one of their members back then. Ignoring Darui, Kurostsuchi continued to glare at Naruto. I simply can't overlook the incident at the tuning exams, Kurostsuchi said. I said I was sorry for the trouble, the Hokage insisted once again. This isn't about the Otsutsuki, Kurostsuchi snapped. Naruto froze, the stiff smile still on his lips. Beads of sweat trickled down his forehead. Shikamaru couldn't remember anyone getting this heated at the 5 Kage meetings since he started attending them. Kurostsuchi's blood was boiling on this particular day. End quote. Now, I gotta say this right now. This is one of the sides of Naruto that I really enjoy, the political side. And I gotta say, one thing that you're seeing right here is that notice how when they start talking about all the people who were part of the Shinobi Union, they didn't mention Naruto because Naruto wasn't part of it. And you're seeing the importance of actually preparing the Kages before they actually become Kage. Naruto during this time, Naruto's on the bench, but it took Naruto a lot longer than the other Kages to actually be recognized as the Kage of his village. Now, I love the way this novel makes a slight reference to the Shinobi Union, which I've done a whole video covering in detail, but understanding the importance of that union is the key to understanding Kurostsuchi's rage in this moment. So, in short, the Shinobi Union is something that Kakashi came up with after the war that saw all the Kage candidates of all 5 villages working together to handle village level issues, assign missions to ninjas, and handle issues before they came up to the attention of the 5 Kage. And these Kage candidates will also be reading the briefings that the 5 Kage would eventually get. Basically, it was a way to stop threats from breaking up the peace between nations and to prepare the next generation of Kage for the opportunity to lead their village. Now, the current 5 Kage, like stated before, with the exception of Naruto, who wasn't placed on that board at the time, were all part of the Union. The current Tsuchikage bought into the importance of the role of the Shinobi Union, and it was the work done that was in that particular group that paved the way for her becoming the Kage of her village. Part of the agreement was that this group would share all intel, but Kurostsuchi pointed out a very harsh truth about Konoha. Konoha has indeed seemed to always be the center of problems and tends to withhold information from the other villages. Whereas the previous Raikage was quick to build chakra cannons behind everyone's back, a clear violation of the treaty after the war, Konoha continuously violated the treaty by not sharing any intel. So for those of you guys who might be doubting things and saying, what the hell are you talking about right now? Let's just go ahead and establish a few things. So before the Shinobi Union was created, it was Konoha Shinobi who started the war that killed more ninja than any other war that took place prior. Just on day 1 of the war, 50,000 shinobi had died. Obito Uchiha started this war after Sasuke Uchiha attacked the 5 Kage summit. Kabuto, a former Konoha shinobi, used Edo Tensei, which was a major strength for the enemy during the war. Madara Uchiha, one of the founders of Konoha's village, was revealed to be the puppet master behind the war. Madara was also a former Konoha shinobi. Sasuke had openly talked about killing the 5 Kage while they were stuck in the infinite Tsukiyomi before the fight with Naruto, and it took Naruto begging for his release and Kakashi throwing around his weight as a newly minted Hokage to get Sasuke put on probation, something that even years after the war, not all the old generation Kage have forgave Sasuke for his actions. So let's look at the timeline even closer. So in the year after the war, you had the Land of Waves massacre that took place in the prologue of the Kakashi Hida novel, which saw Naruto and Sai clean up the aftermath of it. You had a conflict where an airship that was created in the Land of Waves, which is also territory of the Land of Fire, almost came crashing down into the Hidden Stone Village territory and saw Inoki and Kurostsuchi personally head to Kakashi's location with the intention of destroying the airship, and if Kakashi did not get off of the ship in time, they planned on destroying Kakashi while Kakashi was on that ship. You had the incident in the Land of Silence where a village of ex-shinobi had gathered, on another continent and was led by a ninja named Gingo. In videos I've covered in the past, Kakashi was so alarmed by the intel that he received that he planned to step out of the Hokage office to deal with the matter personally, and even acknowledged that if he failed, it would break the alliance between the 5 great nations because this was a threat level that they were supposed to share with one another. In that instance, ninja from the other nations assembled to help bail Shikamaru's team out when they got in over their heads. 2 years later, the 5 Kage were supposed to meet to discuss the execution of Sasuke Uchiha because unknown to them, it was a Konoha root shinobi who was loyal to Danzo who had used technology to turn himself into a Sasuke clone to form a rebellion against the 5 great nations and frame Sasuke for it. Gar agreed to sit on that intel to allow Kakashi a few weeks to clear Sasuke's name, and this became the instant with the tail beast drugs that saw Anbu taking drugs that at the highest dosage could transform a person into a pseudo version of the full 9-tailed cloak Jinchuriki. Because these pills were made from Naruto's DNA, which I've covered in an entire video, the tailed beast drug explained, as well as Sakura's deadliest battle. It was a direct violation of military expansion, something that Kakashi had to disclose to other Kages in order to clear Sasuke's name. Then, years later, you have the Momoshiki incident, which led to Kurostsuchi blowing up at the 5 Kage during the 5 Kage summit. Kurostsuchi was a member of the Shinobi Union during all those prior events, save for the versus Momoshiki arc where she wasn't a Kage candidate, but instead she was the actual Kage. During that time, she received the same reports that the other Kages received as she did when she was in line for a Kage herself, a Kage candidate under Onoiki. Konoha on a repeated basis violated their treaty and withheld whatever info and never told the truth unless things got out too far out of hand or they were absolutely forced to do so. When she gets on to Naruto, she's basically calling him out for being no different than the prior Hokages, with the exception of being hundreds of times more powerful than the other Kages and having a boyish smile when he apologized. Simply put, this was someone who saw a pattern of Konoha not treating the other nations as equals, and she wanted to voice her displeasure at how Konoha had handled things, which given her nature isn't completely crazy when you look at the evidence. While the other Kages were willing to once again overlook Konoha's actions, she rightfully pointed out that it was a continued pattern, and if we're being honest, trust is a two-way street, and you can't have one person selectively uphold their end of the bargain. However, that's where we're going to bring this edition of Shikamaru Shinden to a close. The sparks are going to continue to fly in the next video because the tension between the Kages only heats up from here. So my question to you guys is, do you think that Kurostsuchi was right? Or do you think that Darui was right that she overreacted? Do you think that Naruto's done a better job since then of sharing intel about Kara and the discovery of Kawaki and communicating with the other 5 Kages? Let me know down in the comment section below. But as always, guys, if you like anything I had to say, don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, and share. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. Have an awesome day, guys.